Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest. Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
What's up? What is up? I'm your host, Elia Einhorn. Welcome back to the Talkhouse Podcast. This week I'm joined in our studio in Bushwick, Brooklyn by the one, the only...
Oh, me?
You.
Okay. I'm Nick Dawson, editor-in-chief of Talkhouse Film. I am technically present in the room.
Nick, I have been so excited to share this episode with our listeners. There are two guests on here. One that's been on the show a few times, who is maybe one of the funniest men alive, Chris Gethard. The other, who I've been a fan of for a long time and is joining us for the very first time, Maria Bamford.
Very, very exciting to have these two together. We got to hang out with them at the Hilton Garden Inn. So, life achievement unlocked. I was so happy to have them talk together. Maria has a new show on the streaming service topic called What's Your Ailment, which is sort of about comedy and mental health. And it was just really fantastic to get the two of them together, as they're such a perfect pairing in a way. Two comedians who've really, in their work, talked very openly and very funnily about their struggles with mental health issues.
Yeah, these two comedians have really centered their work in examining their own mental health and making that relatable and, in fact, helpful to their legions of fans. This episode marks Chris Gethard's fourth appearance on the show. He's previously been on the show with Tim Heidecker, Todd Barry, and Mel Blum.
Yeah, a good time was had on all those episodes. It's always great to have Chris on. And of course, you know him from Broad City, his HBO special Career Suicide. He's written a couple of books, the Chris Gethard Show. He's everywhere. And most recently, he's just started a new open access show called Chris Gethard Presents on MNN. And he's playing Toby in Awkwafina is Nora from Queens. I'm still not used to the title Awkwafina is Nora from Queens. It's designed to not roll off the tongue.
Right. Isn't the Awkwafina is just supposed to be for the subway poster part?
No, it's actually the name of the show.
No, I know. Longtime fan of Chris Gethard, also longtime fan of Maria Bamford. I just adored the shows that she uploaded to the internet that became the Maria Bamford Show. That was later turned into the series Lady Dynamite on Netflix with a much higher production budget. I would say about 1 million times the production budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course she has not only a fantastic sense of humor and very unusual sense of humor, but a great voice. And she
does the voice on this show, Nick. She does the Maria Bamford voice. I couldn't believe it when it happened.
Wonderful. Yeah, but I mean, she's done voice work on American Dad, Adventure Time, BoJack Horseman, and has guested on shows like Louie and Arrested Development. And, you know, she's just like one of those comedy institutions in a way. She's like a complete original, and having her talk to Gethard was kind of just like one of those dream pairings.
It really was. And can I just say something that I don't usually talk about on the show about what people are like in person? I wasn't sure what to expect from Maria Bamford because it's like she's always playing this Maria Bamford character. I was wrong, Nick Dawson. That is Maria Bamford. Maria Bamford is Maria Bamford, as you all will see on this show. And she is just as quirky and funny and sweet as you would think.
Yeah. And more shocking stuff. You'll be shocked to hear that they talked about mental health stuff and were very funny about it.
Yeah, just like in their comedy, they're willing to get vulnerable here and somehow make us laugh so hard we're crying.
Yeah, I kind of broke my cardinal rule of not laughing out loud during a recording.
Well, I mean, look, we're used to Maria Bamford doing full comedy specials just for her mom and dad. You thought that this was the Hilton Garden Inn tour stop. As you mentioned, they get into a lot of stuff around mental health, running out of prescription meds, bad or, quote, unconventional shrinks.
Yeah, Chris has amazing stories about his therapist.
Does. And also the toll that speaking about mental health issues in their work can take, especially when they have fans talking about some really intense stuff that they then take home with them.
Yeah, that's...
Not the fans. They're not taking the fans home.
No, that was a different tour.
They also discuss at length their dreams of quitting comedy.
Yeah, it's funny because this is also a topic that came up in the Jonah Ray, Felicia Day podcast where they were both fantasizing about quitting. And I guess, you know, comedy's a tough life, you know, like traveling around everywhere, staying in shitty hotel rooms and not seeing your family for years and dealing with hecklers and all this kind of thing. But they have some pretty good ideas of things that they might do.
They also get into what comedians really talk about with each other.
Essential topic there. They also talk about comedy that makes a difference, that is helpful to people.
But don't think this is all about saving people.
Nope.
Because they also cover spritzing ejaculate, awful tweets after appearing on dude comedy shows, and the queen of meat herself becoming a life coach.
Let's play the tape, shall we?
Let's do it.
It's just a freewheeling, anything goes chat.
Oh, I love it. Okay,
between two notorious pistols of
yeah,
human beings. Yeah.
God. Yeah, no, well, yeah. Well, sometimes I can't make eye contact. Please don't take that personally.
I'm the same exact way. I think we're on the same page. Have we begun? Oh, we've begun.
Okay. Yes.
Well, I wanted to ask you something.
Yes, please.
If that's because I watched the Jen Kirkman episode of your series.
Yeah.
I was very impressed.
Thank God.
As always, very impressed by what you're doing. But I wanted to ask, because I know that when I've spoken about mental health stuff, I feel like when you do that, very often you put yourself in a position where you're taking care of others. So I just wanted to ask how you're doing. Because I don't know if your experience, sometimes I find that when I talk most openly about it, or sort of make that the tip of the spear on what I'm talking about, it means I feel like I'm taking care of everyone else. And very often, nobody asks me how I'm doing. So how are you doing?
Oh, well, that's very gracious of you. I am doing okay. I just had a cold brew, which my husband says really amps me up a lot. But I get anxious. I think insecurity about show business, but that my mind doesn't work as fast as it does when I used to not be on meds. So that's how I'm doing in terms of that. And then I have a show coming up in Vancouver. And that's when I start to get these dark feelings of like, oh boy, this is going to be a real shitstorm, Bamford. Because I haven't done a show in a while, stand-up show. So, have the light anxiety or some thoughts about that. Have some curiosity about those thoughts. But otherwise, am doing okay. Thank you very much, I think.
That's great to hear.
How about yourself?
I'm pretty good. I, in general, my life is pretty great. I will say I have a 9-month-old at home, which is really exciting, but it does, in very cliche fashion, it messes with your sleep. So this is like the third night in a row where I think I got like 5.5 hours last night, and that's the most I've gotten all week. And I think, I'm sure you would agree, like,
yes.
I know that my mental health stuff is flaring up when I can't sleep. And then conversely, it's like, oh, now I can't sleep for a different reason. But that also, I'm just like, exhaustion means the bottom could fall out. So I just have to be careful of that. But very good overall.
Yeah. I can relate with that. Because we traveled here. Or I live in LA. We're in New York. And my sleep gets a little screwed up. I also ran out of my prescription, which turns
the worst.
Which it turned out I was able to find some in my purse.
But
I went to CVS last night, and I thought they had called it in, but they hadn't called it in. And you know how it is. What's so interesting about psychiatrist's office? They say it is not an emergency to get a prescription refill, and I'm like, isn't it though? I mean.
Yeah.
Kind of, isn't it? Every psychiatrist I've ever had has said, wait until the next business day to get your prescription refilled. If like, let's say you've lost it, or because I'm traveling a lot and I've misplaced it before, or forgotten it. So, I mean, not to be a huge pain in the ass, but I always think, well, isn't that the whole thing, that you got to stay on the
right? And you would think too, it's like, hey, whatever science you've researched for these particular drugs, can we just maybe also note that it's a good security blanket that I don't want to go without? I don't like the idea that that's not in my medicine cabinet. And whether or not I would survive another day without it is maybe a moot point compared to the fact that I'm going to spend that day freaking out and unhappy.
Yeah, or I know that without my meds I can't sleep. Which I start to have a lot of great ideas when I can't sleep, which that can be fun. But do you have any side effects from your current medications that really bum you out? Or
I do feel like I had much worse side effects when I first went on them. I mean, I first went on them in 2003, which I think side effects back then were worse in general.
Sure.
But I was like on one where you couldn't lose weight, and they told me like really be careful with how you eat, and I just disregarded that.
Yeah.
And then it was that loop of like, well, I feel better, but then I'm looking in the mirror and now I don't feel better. And there were sexual side effects.
Oh, no.
And I was on an antipsychotic for a while that had, I talked about this in my HBO special. It's very early in the morning. I don't know how graphic you want me to be.
No, I'm down.
It made my ejaculate come out like small spritz of water. And it was, I was 23 or 24 at the time. And I think like, especially when you're like a young male who grew up in New Jersey, there's like, and you're already admitting like vulnerability and weakness for the first time. Like you don't necessarily want like more masculinity issues.
No, yeah, no.
My current cocktail has been very smooth and easygoing. Although I will say like my hairline has always looked crazy and now it's retreating at a record pace. And I have read that Wellbutrin can contribute to that. But I've also been on Wellbutrin off and on for 15 years. So I might just be balding. But I sometimes wonder if I switch drugs, would the hair growth come back a little bit? Yeah. But then I'm also like, well, that's just vanity and ego. And do I really want to mess with drugs that are working just so I can feel like a little slightly less insecure about something that I'll get used to, you know?
Yeah, or would it just be something else on another medication? Yeah, I've had people, I have a bit of a tremor on my meds, and then I had some weight gain. I used to be super wiry, tiny little lady, which can be very empowering. You can jump around. Yeah, so I've had some people, I'm sure you get people through the internet going, you know what I've tried? You know what? You've got to try, whatever it is, date and granola balls with a side of Lamictal. And
Lamictal and Wellbutrin, that's my
oh, really?
That's my moves.
Yeah, Lamictal, Lamictal somehow did not work for me, but I'm been feeling good the past several years, so I don't want to change anything.
Yeah,
I don't care.
No way.
But do you go to therapy? And if you do, does it cost a ton of money?
I do. I'm in a very interesting situation where, and again, I talked about this very publicly, so I'm sure she won't mind. I have been with a shrink from, so let's see, 2002, came out of college and finally was like, something's really wrong. Yeah. And got treatment, got on Depakote, Wellbutrin, and Risperdal, heavy-duty stuff. I was out there coming water, putting on weight. And then I moved to L.A. I lived in L.A. for 4 or 5 months in 2004. I was working on a show that Matt Besser sold to Comedy Central. So I was out there, and I ran into a situation like we were talking about before where my shrink back home in New Jersey, because I'd been living in New Jersey until I moved to LA, I had explained the whole thing to him. I'm going to be in LA for 3 months. And he prescribed me 3 months worth of medication. And then I got out there and the job got extended to a 4th month. Okay. And I started calling him and he just wasn't calling me back. And when I finally got in touch with him, he's very, very sort of like stern and told me he wouldn't prescribe more over the phone. And it had taken me like a full week to even get a call back from him. So I went to a doctor in LA a coworker of mine was like, just go see my guy. He prescribed me. Mm-hmm. And that scared me really bad and made me feel like, wow, I can't be reliant on something. I can't feel reliant on a thing that could be taken away that easily. These people didn't protect me. So then I went off meds and for about 3 or 4 years. And then as my career started to develop, I wound up, as we all do, in some situations where I was coming really close to stuff and not getting it, which now I look back on and realize, when you're 26 and 27, it's actually a very exciting place to be finally coming close. And I was a guest writer at SNL for 2 weeks, and then I didn't get the job. Yeah. And then I didn't get the job. And as we all do, both as artists and people whose brains are built like you and I assumed everything was over and I had blown my chance, and it just created this downward spiral. And I wound up back in therapy with a doctor who is, I would say, and she would admit, probably does not play by all the rules as a medical school would encourage one to.
What is she using? Sock puppets? What's going on?
No sock puppets, but like, what's some stuff she's done recently? I'm trying to think. Like like in my special, I talk about how she at one point like kept encouraging me to go see a numerologist who was like an astrologer. You know, basically like I'm like, that's not science. And she's like, but it can really supplement. And I had to be like, that's not for me. That's not like, I know a ton about her personal life. I've been to her house. Like she's met my dad. She once saw me in a show at UCB in New York, and she lived in New Jersey. And my parents were at the show too. And my shrink had a bad back and was going to take a bus back to Jersey, and instead was like, hey, met my parents and was like, can I get a ride home? So she got a ride home from my parents without me in the car. Like things where 90% of people would be like, flee for the hills. But one of the points I really tried to make, because I realized, like, as I was working on like telling the stories from this stuff more and more publicly, and it was building into this show that I wound up doing, I started to realize, like, ultimately this show is about my relationship with her. And one of the big points I tried to make is like, for a lot of people, her behavior would be concerning and they wouldn't want to be a part of it. But for me, it turns out that works, and I'm far more comfortable with feeling like it's that type of relationship, despite whatever the medical recommendation is or whatever medical skill says. Like at the end of the day, there was also a night where I was standing on a cliff in New Jersey and called her, and she picked up the phone right away.
She picked up the phone.
So
yay.
One of the points I make in my show is like, when I was in LA and that guy wouldn't call me back and then wouldn't prescribe, well, that's what medical school tells you to do. Yeah. And for some people, I'm sure they feel really safe in those standards, but I felt the opposite of safe. And with her, like, she once gave me a futon, and me and my dad went and picked up a futon from her house. Like, that's not how they would tell you to do it medical school. Go to your shrink's house with your dad and then sleep on her furniture. But she picked up the phone. So I'm still with her.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
13 years now.
13 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it sounds wonderful. It sounds great what you've got. That's great.
It's pretty all right. So the less frequently she sees me, she charges me a little bit more to kind of make up the difference, which I think is fair. It's a sliding thing.
I pay my current therapist, who I met in, she was an outpatient therapist at, I did like a 10-week program, which you do after you're hospitalized. And I did it twice, got 2 certifications, and I completed it. Thank you very much. And everyone signed it, so it's real. But she took insurance, and then she went off insurance. So now she's $180. $180
Can you get any of it reimbursed?
I can, but it is so complicated. The paperwork, I had to use an entire therapy session to fill out the fucking paperwork.
So you're paying her money to get some of the money back that you're paying her for the process of trying to figure out how to get the money back.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, ridiculous.
I hate to say it, but for years, probably about 10 years, I was aware I could be getting money back because my therapist also out of pocket, and I just went through that and didn't bother for 10 years. Just spent more money.
And also then when you call the health care provider, my insurance, they're ridiculous. And I don't want to have some, it's just very, very stressful. And also I can afford it, which is...
We're blessed.
I'm not, that is my answer to a lot of things, is to throw money at it. But then what that does is it creates a false engine of me having to do more work, thinking like, I got to keep making money.
The constant fear.
And it's like, no, you don't. Dude, if you paid more attention to your finances or could figure out the paperwork, maybe you wouldn't have to do Go Bananas in Cincinnati. That has not booked me.
I'm in that place right now. I'm in that exact place right now. Because I will say this. This is going to make me sound like fancy and a spoiled entertainment person, and I am. I'm not going to pretend I'm not.
Well, we're here in a Hampton Inn. Wait a minute. It's a Hilton Garden Inn. Excuse me.
Yes. Is that better or worse than the Hampton?
Hilton Garden is much better than a Hampton. I got it. Well, depends on what you enjoy. Hampers are always very, it's always the same experience. Hilton Garden, you kind of makes it, it's always a little fancy. They got a little restaurant place. So I don't know. I enjoy them both. They both get Hilton Honors points.
This just went from like the mental health conversation to classic stand-up.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I love it. Like
So
that's
sorry.
so people, I feel like have this thing. I've been doing a lot of like jujitsu to work out because I love it. And these guys are like these tough fighter kids. Will be like, "You're a stand-up. Oh man, tell me all about it." And it's like, really, what we talk about is quality of hotels. Endless talk about frequent flyer programs, like
No.
it's all just like logistics and trying to get through it, and then stories about which clubs have weird people working there.
Yeah. Merch.
Yes, merch. Yes, which clubs have gotten better or worse over the years.
Oh, do you? This is a question of my own curiosity, because I think about it. I've thought about it my entire life. It's which is doing something else. I always think of other jobs.
Oh, I'm so glad we're talking. I'm in a phase right now where I really would love to quit comedy more than I've ever.
High fives all around.
I've never more so. I mean, because I started at UCB when I was 20, and I turned 40 in a couple months.
Yeah.
It's like over half my life, and I have a son now. And there's always that nagging question of like, why keep doing this? But then there's also that thing of like, well, I don't know what else I could ever do. It's not like my resume is going to stand up to any test.
I don't know about that though. Like I think about it. Like I just did some volunteer work at a local environmental group, and I can file and clean just as well as any of those scamps. I can clean a bathroom. They need me. Yeah, and I think, anyways, I like to always have options, but the problem is I've created a machine where I need to make a certain amount of money to keep going, and it's like, which is totally a lie and some sort of perception that isn't true. Like I could definitely we could lower our expenses, and I could go to grad school. We're fine. But, or I wouldn't even have to go to grad school.
This is like my internal monologue every day for the past 6 months. Like what you're saying out loud is the constant loop of me being like, what's the exit strategy? I'll be fine. Don't chase the money.
Yeah, don't chase money. Yeah.
Like I had a couple years that were really great, but I don't need to, this thing that I think is a very American instinct of like, you have to make more than last year, every year. I don't want to fall into, what you're saying is my monologue. Yeah,
and I think, well, like I am interested in other things. Like I think, okay, I like writing. I think, okay, maybe I could do that. But I also, the feeling useful, I think that's a human need to feel useful. And especially with the comedy boom, it's odd. Like the special is so not special, it's become ubiquitous.
Yes,
it's like
I've had that.
It's like
the only time I ever wish I lived in LA is when I have individual conversations like this with people like you, where I'm like, oh, if I had been in LA for years, I understand who my allies / friends would have been. That's the only thing, because I'm like, this is the conversation I have in my head all the time.
Yeah. And so the things that I felt useful, extremely useful doing, which is, I have felt good talking about mental health issues, because that did, but as an attention getting thing, as a thing like with this What's Your Ailment program, like to have to promote it, I go, no, I don't, no thanks. Like, I really like the idea of like, if people find it, that's awesome, but I don't want to force people to watch another thing. Why don't you look into the eyes of your loved one?
Right.
Or stare at a wall. Walls are
take
interesting
a walk.
when you take,
Remember what trees
Sorry.
are, and wind feels like on your skin, and sun.
Lay down in the dirt face first and snort. And also I think about my own mental health and go, well, is it good for me to feel like the only reason I have value is because I receive attention,
right?
And that's a concern. But I was a secretary for 10 years, and I know what it's like to not receive attention, and I think everybody knows what that's like if you've ever had a job. So I don't know. It's hard to say, but I like thinking that there's freedom, that I'm not trapped, that I am making a decision to be in this job and to continue doing work on it. That it's choice.
Yes.
Because, I'm smart enough. I've worked in all sorts of jobs. If I'm not very good at this job, I could be not very good at some other ones too.
Yeah. I also am well aware. It's funny because I have all these like existential thoughts, but I'm also well aware that when I started this, I never would have dreamed that I could have taken it this far.
Yeah, no.
And I'm so appreciative of that. And I got to live my dream. And the large majority of people can't say that. And there's also this idea that like it's romanticized that how hard comedy is. And it's not easy and you have to hustle. But I also know that there's like coal miners dying of black lung, like.
There's people who get up and go 9 to 5 every single day. The people here who are here with us right now who are having to listen to this. And, like there's anything besides inertia is painful. Or there's a reason there is inertia is because it's painful to move at all. Nobody wants to move around.
Yeah.
At least I don't. Some people do.
What never gets old is when someone comes up and goes, and I'm sure you've seen this too, and someone goes like, my brother was hospitalized and I never understood. And some of the stuff you've put out has helped me see maybe what was going on with him more than he's ever been able to verbalize. Or even sadder ones where I've had a few people tell me, I lost a child to suicide.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a thing that will never heal for a parent, but for them to say, it was really someone who saw my show live off Broadway, someone who I knew and did not know that about them, who told me that. And it was, I don't want to reveal too much, but it was someone who I had worked with who hadn't totally been a fan of working with me, which happens sometimes. And
unfortunately.
And where I was even surprised to see them there. And then they told me the reason I came was I heard what your show is about, and they told me they'd lost a kid. And to hear someone say, because when people kind of go off the grid in terms of their mental state, part of what's so hard for people who haven't dealt with it is that there's no logic to it. So that the logic and the emotions do not match. I can be logically aware that what I'm thinking isn't real. It doesn't change the fact that emotionally I am terrified of this thing. That I can take a step back and go, I know that's not real, but I'm also still going to curl up in my bed and put the covers over my head because I'm scared of it.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that it's really hard to explain to someone who hasn't been in there. And to hear someone say, I lost someone in my life, and to hear people speak openly about it allows me to understand the foundation that they were, like that shifting foundation that they were dealing with. To hear some people say that that's given them a little bit of peace of mind, like that always makes me feel like, all right, yes, that's why I made it. Seeing people who go, I am an immense amount of pain and I want you to know about it, is that double-edged sword of like, this is so flattering and I'm so happy I helped. And also, I guess I'm just going to go back to my room in Atlanta now and think about this. Like, that's the tough part,
Well, that's when you have to get into TLC programming. Have you watched Dr. Pimple Popper? So good. Oh my God, such a release on so many levels.
Is that your preferred channel? I like a good documentary. Post stand-up show, I like a good Discovery Channel nature documentary, especially if it's about like chimps attacking humans or something. Like, I like a good dark nature documentary. Yeah, just sit and think about the pain of my own fan base while I watch monkeys stare men limb to limb, limb for limb.
But also, like, I am a fan of, or have gotten a lot of help from other people who've talked about whatever mental health experience they've had. Kay Redfield Jameson or Mari Hornbacher, both writers, and
Paul, who does the mental illness happy hour.
Oh yes, Paul Gilmartin.
Yes.
And
very good man.
And I never, even though those people have helped me, and I go, if I'd met them, I'd be like, oh my God, your book was so helpful. But I wouldn't feel like, oh, they've got to take care of it. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So I think unless somebody isn't feeling well, I don't think people are expecting as much from their comedian as...
Yeah, a lot of it is me projecting it and taking it on and wondering how, as someone who spent the large majority of my life hiding all of this stuff and then going so far in the opposite direction, I think some of it is much less about what they're saying to me and much more about me going, I'm still not sure if that was a good idea. So point being, I brought it all up to say, I am continuously impressed by your ability to like keep putting your foot on the gas and making that change and helping those people, because I have shied away from it in fear ultimately. So I'm so impressed by you.
I think we can all agree here in this Hilton Garden Inn room, room 808, that the arts have not changed anything to society as a whole over time, over the past centuries. I think we can all agree on that. And now my new thing is I feel like I want to genuinely help people in a way. Like I've asked people if they could bring something for me to do. So that I could do during crowd, I'll clean out your purse or I'll wash your glasses. Like just some added value to this fucking entertainment cycle, like.
I love that.
I'll add something up. Let's make a call to the IRS. Are you scared? I'm not.
I will say, this is audio, but the people in the room can vouch for me. You just brought that up, and I was so tickled by it. I put my elbow on a desk, put my face on my fist, and just lovingly gazed at the idea. Just stared at you with such respect and love, because I'm so impressed.
Now that I've gotten older, too, I like to boss people around. So if somebody... Like, you think you have great ideas. So if somebody asks me for advice, oh my God, I've got tons of advice. Tell them to do stuff. I'm down to help in whatever way I can, even if that means harming. Because sometimes terrible help can buoy you into a new place of like, oh my God, that was awful and useless. Yeah. And then you go, I think I know what to do.
Yeah.
Instead.
I think that's true. I've given, for some, especially I think especially for comedians in New York who come up more in the alt world or the improv world, and they see that I've kind of crossed into all different scenes. Sometimes people have asked me for advice, and I really love that. And I think I always wanted to be a teacher growing up, and I think I still have that instinct of like, yes, you're giving me a chance to help, thank you. And I have given people good advice, but I think you're right. Sometimes I've given people really bad advice.
I've got some terrible advice.
But that ultimately helps them just as much, right? Because they can then go, that was not for me, and I can cross that right off the list because that was a disaster. And there's a part of me where I'm like, and you are welcome. I gave you 3 useless months of your life pursuing something that I thought was a great idea because it worked for me once in 2008.
Yeah, I've given the advice of like to a few people, like just get a job, any job. If you work full-time at something, it'll energize you to do other stuff, and said it very vehemently. And, oh God, like I know what I'm doing. And then I believe the 2 people I told them, one person got a TV series within like the next week. And they're like, I'm buying buildings now. And I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You might want to still sign up with Apple One though. That is the thing I think about, also thinking about different jobs, is it makes me realize how much I appreciate this job. But I do, what jobs have you thought of in it?
It's focusing more, like staying in the world of creativity and comedy, focusing more on writing, like you said.
Yeah.
I also am very lucky that I have a podcast that, and it was featured on This American Life, so it like blew up and locked in, and that's become. To have this thing show up when I was 36 years old, that became this thing that people really enjoy, and it's so laid back, and I love doing it, and it's this safety net that I could live off of that. It
my God, awesome.
Be a massive, like you said, I'd have to just take a deep breath and go, you're letting a lot of other money go, and that's okay. So I've thought about just scaling it down to, I'm moving to the woods in New Jersey in a couple months. I'm going to build a podcast studio in the basement.
Come on now.
Do that from home and then figure it out. Do I want to write? Do I want to come into the city for sets? Do I want to pursue acting? How will I find insurance? Can I afford insurance if I have to go out of pocket? All these questions I have. So those are the things. And then the silly one that I literally have never told anyone, not even my wife, is that lately I've become obsessed with the idea of trying to become like a union organizer.
Ooh.
Because I think that that's such a noble thing. And a friend of mine from college is a lawyer who is, the WGA keeps managing to unionize all these like online outlets and stuff. And I'm so impressed by her. And she and I have talked about it on the phone. And I'm like, that's so badass. And then I just went and watched, have you ever seen the documentary Harlan County, USA?
Mm-mm.
It's about these coal miners in the 70s who went on strike, and like literally the company was sending men with guns to shoot at them, and they have documentary footage of like cars rolling up and pointing at guns at them, and like footage where you hear gunshots in the background and the camera starts spinning and everyone's running. And I'm like, man, like, and all the political talk in 2020 where I'm like, unions are badass and they're getting weak, and I would love to just, and we have cushy entertainment industry unions, but like the WGA, I've seen them do some good stuff. I've had SAG show up on some sets where things were bad, where I'm like, unions are cool, and that would be a cool thing. Try to help some people who work gruffer lives than I do and need someone to fight for them. But that's also one of these fantasies that in 3 months I won't be thinking about. How about you?
Well, okay. Yeah, I guess I like to be a part of a group, a machine. I like to be in the thing where I'm not the leader.
Yes.
So I want somebody else, and then tell me what to do. So I think about like social work, like helping people, but somebody else has to help me help them. Like I feel scared that I'd say the wrong thing and fuck something up.
Yeah.
Which of course will happen. And it's not about that. I looked into library science. I love libraries. I love books. Yeah, my husband and I thought about maybe opening a bookstore or something, because I do like I love to read. And what else have I thought of? I thought about like definitely hopeful things like a nursing assistant or something where I could learn how to flip and powder everybody. And they don't call it, well, they might call it that.
The dream.
Yeah, you got to keep everybody dry and tight. You don't want to keep those, because bed sores, that is the bane. That is the bane of many's existence. You got to keep everything dry and
tight. Don't forget tight.
And tight. And so I think about that. I think about teaching but I always like the teachers who are just like, you're doing great. Like that's the only kind of teacher I want to be, is like, oh, have you thought of that? Oh, don't listen to me. Do what you need to do. Like I had a teacher at the Wizard of Art. His name is Paul. Paul is a wizard. He's in his late 60s. He teaches art to mostly children, but the occasional adult that drops by in Los Feliz, California. I got to be one of his classes. My classmates were all under the age of 12. So positive. Man, what are you doing? You doing a SpongeBob triptych? Well, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, no, you are painting the heck out of that, man. You could bring in anything and he'd be so psyched for you. And that's the kind of, I would like to be that kind of teacher of like, that's just great job. I could treat him like, especially with a stand-up, because I feel like I wouldn't mind. I mean, that's the only thing I know, so I could teach that. But I get worried because I just go, sometimes it is such a, I guess I wouldn't want to set anybody up for the pain I've experienced.
Yes. I taught improv for years at UCB.
Oh!
And I was really, it's one of the only things in my life I can point to and say, like, I really understood that, how to say things clearly in a way. Like, I understood how to teach that. And I haven't done improv in many years, but I do really miss being in an environment where there were, like, people showing up who were younger than I was, who had a fire in their gut that I don't have anymore.
Yes.
And recognizing that and being like, oh, that flame is extinguishing for me at a very quick rate.
Yeah.
But I love fanning the flame in someone else and seeing, because that's the other thing. It's also like, I came up and I fought really hard for all the stuff I did, and it felt so important to me to like push it through, and then I pushed it through, and I kind of don't have a chip on my shoulder anymore.
Oh, no, not at all.
And I'm like a 40-year-old white guy who's married to a lady, and I don't know if the world needs me pretending to have a chip on my shoulder in 2020. You know?
My God. I'm 50. I'm now a wealthy white lady. No need. Nobody needs to hear what I have to say.
Well,
hey,
that's not true about you.
Well, but
because you're fighting the good fight on stuff that is helping so many people.
I would
I have said, I am tapping out on the mental health thing.
Yeah.
So does the world need me telling more jokes about how weird it was when I met this park ranger in Hawaii who made fun of me? Like, I don't. Who needs more of that?
No, I totally relate with that. And the great thing is I've heard some more different experiences. Like, I would love to hear somebody talk and stand up about schizophrenia or different mental health issues that are still very much stigmatized. I can't wait. I'm sure they're out there doing it. And Lisa Lampanelli became a life coach.
Yeah. The Queen of Mean.
Queen of Mean.
Imagine getting life coached by the person who is known as the Queen of Mean.
I thought about hiring because I was like...
That would be amazing. If you hired another comic turned life coach as your life coach, that's brilliant.
You can I could contact her right now on the internet. And I was a little anxious though, because I know she is... Because she was the Queen of Mean. So, and I know I'm not.
Do you know
I'm
her?
so sensitive. We've met a few times just through stand up. And
so if the email showed up, she would immediately go, "What the fuck is going on right now?"
I think she might, but from her website, because I totally checked it out. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. She's living the dream. She's living the dream of because she talks about eating disorders and I believe, at least from what I read, I believe I read one of her memoirs of how compulsive eating was a part of her story. And so, now trying to help other people. And I don't know if being mean is a part of that. I doubt it. That would seem odd, wouldn't it?
I can't imagine.
Well, that would seem strange.
I can't imagine. She once, before she quit, I once did a club when I was just starting out doing the clubs. And she saw me and afterwards came up and was like, "That was funny, dude. Good job." And I don't know why. Some of this, I think, is me needing, like, my ego needing validation from people who aren't like me. But, like, being someone who's all soft and sensitive.
Yes.
Getting a compliment from the Queen of Mean, I was like, that means a lot to me for some reason.
Oh my God. Rich Voss sent me a wonderful, saying that he liked my stuff. And I was like, I thought it was like somebody kidding me. Because I was like, Rich Voss can't like what I do. Like,
he's a nice guy.
I don't know. I've met Rich. I don't know why. I just felt scared.
But is that because we're like, are you constantly? I don't know why. Well, my insecurities. Yes.
Well, sometimes it can happen. Like I was just on the Jim and Sam show. Jim Norton.
I was on it yesterday.
Oh my God! Yeah. We're living parallel lives.
You were on today?
Not today. 2 days ago. And when I'm on dude shows, I get the meanest tweets afterwards. Oh my God! So awful.
I saw all those tweets yesterday from me.
It's just awful. And I just go, I just don't want to do it anymore. Like, I don't want to fight, have a bunch of people go, "Oh, she is crazy. That bitch is insane. Look at how she looks. Look at how old. She looks like an old witch."
I saw one yesterday that said, "Say something funny, crybaby." Wow.
And I just go, I don't know. My mom always had this biblical thing, "Honey, don't put pearls before swine." I don't mean that's what's happening on the Jim and Sam show. I just go, I'm not right for some shows, and then, it's okay. Well, that's another thing with hecklers. Like because I don't want to put out anger anymore. I just don't want to put out anger, and it doesn't really make sense with like who I say I am. So I'm trying to like rewrite like heckle responses of like. Just to have different responses to people yelling out during shows. And I don't know, I'm not really sure what to do about it. I've been doing some mindfulness apps. So I'm just like, well, let's have some curiosity about this.
I enjoy a heckler.
Moment. Yeah, really? Yeah.
Well, because, I did improv for 12 years where 6 days a week I was either doing a show or teaching a class. And stand-up, I don't get as much opportunity. So I always felt, I'm not trying to encourage it if you're hearing this, but I always felt like, especially when I transitioned to stand-up and it was so rocky and so scary and I had established myself with credibility in another world and then I had to go through the process of bombing for years and starting over in stand-up. So when that would come, I'd be like, oh, all these other instincts I have that a lot of other stand-ups haven't trained with in 12 years. And I can just talk. And I found that I actually really enjoy, I'll really get the crowd on my side because someone will heckle me and I'll immediately be like, yeah, no, you're right. And I'm not surprised you're saying that because I've always kind of thought it about myself too. And the crowd will just be like, we hate you, stop being mean to him. No. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's probably only the third worst thought I've had about myself today, sir. Like,
don't smash the echidna; it's endangered.
You can't hurt me when your hate can't hurt me when my brain hates me far more than you do, sir. And the crowd will just be like, woof.
Whoa, hey-o.
Now we all feel uncomfortable. This is why you're going to become an art teacher, and I'm going to go help coal miners unionize.
Yeah! Get ready for it. You're going to have some floody art classes.
All right. I am
Thank you so much.
very late. You're the best. You're the best.
Maria Bamford, Chris Gethard, thank you so much for joining us here on the Talk House podcast. Listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, make sure to check out Chris's other appearances on the podcast, including with Tim Heidecker, Todd Barry, and Mel Blum. There's some great photos from today's recording on our socials at Talkhouse across the board.
Some of them were taken by you, some were taken by me.
Yes, and they are all backlit due to me putting Chris and Maria under a light thinking that they were shorter than they are. Today's show was recorded at Hilton Garden Inn, NYC, and at Hook and Fade Studios in Brooklyn by our co-producer, Mark Yoshizumi. The Talkhouse podcast theme was composed and performed by The Range. Make sure to subscribe to the Talkhouse podcast for some fantastic upcoming pairings, including on the film side, Kelly Reichardt with Olivier Assayas.
Two legends.
On the music side, new pornographer A.C. Newman with Post Animal, and authors George Saunders and Dana Spiotta, all coming up on the show soon.
Are any of those old pornographers? Or?
Oh, I think it's time for you to quit comedy. Till next week, I'm Elliot Einhorn.
I'm Nick Dawson. I'm retiring from comedy, apparently.
Peace and ailments.